Okay, this is a video about how to run dungeons efficiently, and it's not intended for people who are like enjoying the leveling process. It's for people that already know the dungeons, but they don't maybe know how to form their own groups, and they don't know how to get them done quickly. Because this is kind of a... So we're going to show you how to avoid some of the mishaps. Set a clear goal, real easy. Some of the bigger dungeons you have to kind of know what's going on, like Uldaman, Maraudon, and Blackrock depths. They're huge. You probably got to pick a part of it, and then if you are doing the full thing, you need to advertise the full thing. Because it's like, I have never actually done everything in Blackrock depths. I think if you were like level 58 and did the whole thing, it would take about 6 hours. Not even joking on that. It's huge. Yeah, and I typically do some of the larger dungeons in a couple different chunks. Uldaman has a bunch of quests out front. Those monsters are level 35, but the monsters at the end are 48. So that's a level range difference of 13 levels, which is enormous. Going into the details of why DPS drops so much, this is why. And I think people know this, but they don't know the degree to which it happens. When the mob is orange to you, your chance to hit drops dramatically. The chance you'll get parried goes up, the chance you'll get dodged goes up, and then your chance to crit goes down. So you've got 4 different factors for melee that are making you do way less damage. If the monster is orange to you, the mob can hit the tank with crushing blows, which do 50% more damage than a regular thing. So what happens is that you clear through all of the dungeon, you're like 2 hours invested in the thing, you get to the final boss, and then all of a sudden the hardest hitting boss in the game, in the dungeon, is now hitting you way harder than the previous mobs. And then if a monster is 3 levels higher, the melee hits will be glancing blows, and glancing blows do 30% less damage, which is also why the Edgemaster's handguards are so good for raiding. Spell hit chance, I don't think a lot of people necessarily know this. They know, okay, well, you always have a 1% chance to miss no matter what. If a mob is equal level, it's 4%, which if you had 3% chance to hit from gear, then you would be down to the 1%. Plus 1 is 5, plus 2 is 6%. But then look at how it jumps. And this is, I shouldn't have made this yellow, by the way. This would be orange. If the mob is 3 levels higher than you, you all of a sudden lose 11% of your DPS. So if you were doing 50, you're doing 45 now, and the monster has more health. If it goes up higher than that, you're only going to hit, basically, I mean, oversimplifying the fraction, you're only going to hit with every other spell you cast at a mob that's red at you. You're basically being carried at that point. When you're forming the group, the tank level does matter more than the other players. I think most people know that. The healer level, it does not matter as much, but don't go too low, because even if you're having trouble finding one, they'll aggro everything. When a monster does get loose, they'll just instantly drop the healer because they don't have enough hit points. You do want to have, the healer's level does need to be like in the range of everyone else's. These are the levels that I would personally, these are the levels of the monsters, and then the levels that when I form a group, the minimum level that I'm willing to take. I try not to ever have the, I never take when the final boss would be red to a player, I won't take the player. That is basically the key. So obviously a lot of people do dead mines at a level higher, or a level lower than 19, but if you want an efficient run, again, if you do stay at level 19, when you get to Van Cleef, you're not going to be missing that 10% of your DPS. Arugal's 26, and then just, there's a huge level gap, the Scarlet Monastery Graveyard, that's a level range of 8 levels, which is a big deal. Uldaman is even worse than that. You've got the outside is 35, the final boss is 48, a level gap of 13 levels, so you got to do it in a couple different parts. Noxxion and Arugal are both kind of difficult. He was the only boss I wasn't able to multi-box when I was level 48, because he splits and comes back and does a lot of damage. Arugal also, he puts people to sleep, and he actually can be kind of difficult Especially for groups that are under-leveled. He hits like a train. He hits at least 3 times harder than anything else in Sunken Temple. And then after this, you're into the end game. And I forgot a couple, like Gnomeregan is a good place. You can do that in 1 or 2 things. Black Fathom Deeps, if you can get the people for it. And then these bottom 3, nobody really does on the Alliance side. So when you're forming a group, I see sometimes in looking for group, people are looking like, oh, we must have a Warlock. You don't need a Warlock. The player's level is 1,000 times more important than their class. You know, you go to Dead Mines or something, I would rather run it with, 5 Druids or whatever the worst possible combination you could think of. If everyone was level 20, they would crush the place, no problem. There's no... Until you're raiding, class composition doesn't matter that much. But I do recommend bringing a Priest or Paladin because you cannot... if you don't have a real res, anytime someone gets ganked, which does happen a lot, that person has to run all the way back. And a corpse run is like 4 or 5 minutes at least, if there's no respawns and stuff, and it just makes it bad. For forming the group itself, I have a video in this channel that you can watch. People will respond so much better if you whisper them specifically. The other video goes into the details on that. And then judging gear, I'm going to talk more about that in the actual meeting. But until you're raiding, it doesn't matter. Just remember, if people are stacking intellect, they probably don't know what they're doing. Healing and spell damage is the only thing that really matters. Below level 40, there isn't really much of that damage. But when you start getting into like Zul'Furrak and Uldaman, there are some spell damage items. So if you look at someone and they've got a bunch of spell damage or healing gear, they probably know what's going on. Melee and DPS, strength, agility, crit, attack power, that's a little bit more common. Feral Druid gearing is crazy if you ever run into Ferals. And then one thing I also recommend, when you run a dungeon, start a stopwatch. As soon as you decide that you're going to run one, start a stopwatch and see how long it takes you to form the group, fly everyone out there, get everything cleared, get the loot out, and I bet you by the end of it, unless it's one of the shorter dungeons, I bet it's going to be 2-3 hours. And people tend to underestimate how long it takes to do anything in Warcraft. Anyway, that's this video, and I'll put the levels in the comments of the video.